Thank you for being here today to mark another important step that this office is taking to better protect our families and to build a better for Kentucky. I'm joined up here today by Gretchen Hunt, Director of the Attorney General's Office of Victims Advocacy, John Moberly, who heads our Department of Criminal Investigations, and Christy Gray, Assistant Commonwealth Attorney for Jefferson County. Thanks for being here. It's been a bit of a busy week for news, and so I want to start off by highlighting a few things that happened earlier this week and then move into today's announcement. This week we've transferred a total of $3.4 million to the general fund from settlements that this office has secured from two automakers who attempted to defraud Kentuckians and violated our Consumer Protection Act. Nearly $2.8 million was from our settlement with Volkswagen, which we announced earlier this week, and another $625,000 was from a settlement with Hyundai and Kia that we announced yesterday. In bringing these cases, we were also able to ensure that consumers who were deceived got restitution. In going to the general fund, these monies will aid state lawmakers in setting their priorities and putting Kentucky on a path towards prosperity. That means with those funds that as of today, the AG's office has returned more than $20 million to state lawmakers for appropriation this year, which is roughly twice the amount that we receive in general fund dollars. Add in the $8 million we've returned to state Medicaid and the nearly $200 million in restitution and rate savings, and this office right now is projecting a return on investment of $25 for every dollar that we receive from the general fund. I'm also very proud of the news this week from our cybercrimes unit. Our team of investigators arrested 5 Kentuckiana men this week who were seeking sex with minors. The roundup is part of Operation Shield a Child, our initiative which focuses on getting child predators off the streets and behind bars. The Cybercrimes Unit has had a historic year. And it is not even close. The total number of arrests, indictments, and convictions for that unit this year now totals 80. Our families are safer, our communities are safer, and these 5 arrests all occurred in the Jefferson County area, but were from folks who are driving from different places in this Commonwealth. It's a truly remarkable accomplishment. But I'm thankful every day that this office gets to carry on the 4-part mission that we show up to work on every single day. Preventing and prosecuting child abuse, better protecting our seniors from scams and abuse, seeking justice for victims of rape and sexual assault, and finding workable solutions to our drug epidemic. And today we're here to talk about another important step in seeking justice for those victims of sexual assault. I've made it a top priority for this office to end the unacceptable backlog of more than 3,000 safe kids in Kentucky. A problem that never should happen. Each one of these kids is more than a bottom of a shelf. It represents the courage of a victim who has been through a terrible crime, that had the courage to report what is an underreported crime, and then had the additional courage to go in and undergo as long and as thorough and as invasive. The fact that those kids were not tested locked that courage in a box and put it on the shelf. We have tried every single day to address this kit, and we've had this backlog some successes. 6 months after taking office, I was joined by Michelle Kuiper, a survivor and advocate who is dedicated to ending this backlog. That day we transferred $4.5 million of settlement funds secured by this office to the Kentucky State Police. It was every dollar the State Police Crime Lab said they needed to hire more people, train them, and buy more equipment so this Commonwealth would never, ever, ever have a rape kit backlog again in the future. We also committed another $1 million in settlement funds to support Kentucky State Police, local law enforcement, victims advocates, and survivor leaders in formulating a plan to address the backlog, investigating and prosecuting those cases in a victim-centered manner. In September, we teamed up with the Sexual Assault Response Team Advisory Committee to host a safe prosecuting. The training provided more than 200 attendees with those best practices and information that will assist them in the hard work of notifying victims who may have lost faith in the justice system, investigating cold cases, and prosecuting these cases, again, in that victim-centered manner. This office certainly believes, and I know those up here believe, that the most important person in every crime in the perpetrator. We need to find them, we need to arrest them, we need to incarcerate them. But the most important person is the victim who needs our services. The progress, now today, we are taking a step forward in announcing an online toolkit that will support law enforcement in safe kit backlog investigations and prosecutions. The online kit is an innovative new strategy that empowers frontline officers to feel confident and ready to address some of the most challenging cases that they have. Each of these cases will not only be a sexual assault case, but a cold case. Both types of cases that take special skills and training. The toolkit includes the latest best practices in sexual assault investigation culled from around the country. It's concise, hands-on, and contains the information that local law enforcement will need in addressing these investigations. It goes over how to submit evidence and investigate sexual assault in a trauma-informed and victim-centered manner. This toolkit, how these cases are investigated, is absolutely critical. These victims have waited far too long for justice. It may be 5, it may be 10, it may be 15 years. They shouldn't have to wait any moment longer. And we can't drop the ball on any one of these cases. This resource allows us to further support law enforcement in the pursuit of securing justice for those who need it the most. The progress on ending the backlog is a direct result of the combined efforts of a lot of people that include, but are not limited to, Gretchen Hunt, who we introduced, John Moberly, Eileen Rechtenwald from KSAP, Christy Gray, victims advocates and survivors like Michelle Kuiper, the Kentucky State Police, and hundreds of other local law enforcement. I want to thank them for their continued hard work and dedication to ensuring justice for these victims. I'm proud that we are ending this backlog. That once we identified this as the problem that it is, we all found it entirely unacceptable, and that we have worked together to make sure that not only we end it, but make sure it never, ever, ever occurs again. Christy, would you like to make a few comments? Thank you.
The law enforcement community, prosecution community, and victim advocacy community have all been collaborating to try to determine the best way to work on these cases, to plan for the most not only cold cases, but sexual assault cases in general. The development of this toolkit was based on all of the challenges that we identified as a group, shared ideas and information that we put together. So this toolkit provides a great deal of resources, invaluable training, and will help us in going forward, not only handle the cold cases that result from these test kits, but sexual assault investigations in general moving forward.
So this is just one more step to not only ending this backlog, but securing justice for these victims. We'll take questions first on this, and then we'll let most of these folks get out of here, and I'll answer any other questions that you have. Adam. I'm going to let Commissioner Moberly respond to that.
That's really a question for the state police that can give the detailed answer, but this is what we do. First has also, our two largest metropolitan areas also, those kids have also gone out and are starting to come back. I can say that that some of those results are coming in. We don't have the details of that right now, but we're seeing things are actually ahead of schedule.
And I will say, with the first of these kits coming back in Jefferson County, the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, directly through Tom Wine, has assured us that it has their utmost attention and that they are going to dedicate the necessary resources to taking these first set of cases and setting a great example for the rest of the Commonwealth. Yes, Chris?
General Bashir, I guess I'm a little bit confused because we were told that when these kids would start coming back,
Yes.
people would jump on them and they'd get started.
Yes.
Today you say you've now put together a kit to help people deal with
Right.
victims and survivors in an appropriate way. And now we're being told we don't know if there have been any arrests made. Were we putting the cart before the horse getting those kids back before people? Were people prepared to deal with these kids?
The first set of people coming back to Jefferson and then Fayette County. We've already held a training on the best procedures. What we needed was an online tool to where we can reach out to every single community that are going to get some of these. We're going to have sheriff's offices in parts of the state that may have one or two come back. Those haven't come back yet. And they will have not only this resource, but additional training when they come back. The other thing we wanted to know is they're not in this alone. Every resource of our office, and I know of other offices around the state, are here to help them. But we have made sure that we reached out to those that are getting the results first, and they have the training that they need. Now, as those kits are coming back, understand that investigations can and will or have been opened, but those are investigations that folks aren't going to comment on until there has been an arrest or other action.
But you don't know of anyone
What I can say is that there has not been an arrest made yet based on the return kits.
To explain to folks, so the SAFE Summit that was held in September was timed precisely because we acted as quickly as we could to get some of the best practices. We had a national expert from Arizona who's run a cold case unit and detective training, but we understand that repetition is very important in this, that repeating this information for law enforcement is very, very essential. And it also helps for the public to know that the pace of justice is very slow sometimes, that it takes a number of months, even a year sometimes, to put together a traditional case, much less a cold case. So just to explain that there's been numerous efforts as quickly as we knew about the backlog coming back to get that information out to law enforcement.
But Chris, I believe that the process is working. From the preliminary information that we get, the process is working. We need to make sure that it works everywhere. Every single county, every single place that one's coming back, regardless of the resources that they have. And that's the problem we wanted to address. Yes.
Sure. And it's not really about being ill-equipped. And I think what we need to understand is about 10, 12 years ago, technology really changed. That technology cost a lot of money, and it's taken a while for our state to get that technology. We are on the cutting edge. We are one of the first states, and we are making the most impactful changes when it comes to these kits that I've seen across the nation. And what I want to explain to you is that 10, 12 years ago, when this technology came about, officers, they didn't get the training that would catch them up to the technology. So now that the technology is available, there's several things that have gone into effect. With the SAFE Act, the Sexual Assault Forensic Exam Act, that the legislators pushed out this past spring, was much needed. And what that has done is created nearly 40 statutes that basically support policies for law enforcement. It supports improved, and I won't say just improved, but it supports the training that is needed to handle this new technology, because officers did not have a background in the new technology. So this whole piece is really pulling a lot of different things. So you have nearly 40 new statutes that officers and that police departments have to comply with, and that affect how they do their interviews. It affects how they collect the kits, how long they hold on to them, how quickly they submit them, and how long before and how they're destroyed. It affects how the courts have to deal with these. It affects how sexual assault nurses have to. One of the things, like the Department of Criminal Justice Training, they were asked to create training to teach law enforcement how to submit. The state police has also stepped up. The Central Lab, Laura Hutchins there, has done a tremendous job in really trying to educate law enforcement. But the other piece is that one of the things that we've learned, especially when we deal with cases, a lot of these cases are just months old, or a few years old. Sometimes they're decades old. And so understanding how we deal with that victim, the word trauma-informed, victim-centered interview. Most law enforcement, unless you're in a specialized unit, only learns how to interview perpetrators, how to do interrogations. So we are now engaging law enforcement from academies and seasoned officers on how to do victim-centered. And what's so important about that is we have learned, and what we did learn is that you have to have the victims engaged. If you want a successful criminal justice system on a traumatic case like a rape or a sexual assault, if you do not have the victims involved, your case is not going to be as successful as it could be. So teaching law enforcement day one, when you come in contact with that victim, how to treat them, how to understand that under the trauma of being abused or assaulted and going through all the things that is going through their mind, that how to interview through that, how to develop a relationship with that victim to get the information that you need. You don't rush things. I mean, sometimes you wait 24 to 48 hours, but in those first initial hours, you start developing a relationship of trust with that victim, and that will help support the long-term criminal justice system, and that's what we're trying to do. And the Attorney General's office, we were asked to be impactful, figure out how we can make a difference. And so you'll see this training rolling out January 1st. Department of Criminal Justice is doing the training. Obviously, every agency has to attend, or has to attend. So many officers have to attend from every agency. But the fact is, a lot of those agencies are not going to get that training until mid-year, late year, or it's all not going to be in January, February. So our role, one of the things we decided we had to do was, we may not have control over who's getting those results back. So in the meantime, we need to step in, create some best practices, provide tips and suggestions and as much guidance as we can. And we're not going to come in and take other law enforcement cases from them. We want to provide them the resources to be the best they can be, to make sure they're doing victim-centered interviewing, that they understand cold cases, and that, like the question that you asked, that they are continuing to investigate. If they haven't got the information back from the lab yet, there's still a lot of things they can be doing. They can re-engage that victim now. They can start getting that information now, so when they do get those results, they can act on them more quickly. Yes, sir.
But there is a huge difference between the hit, the investigation that occurs after the hit, and the ultimate arrest. And what we can't do, if there have been hits, is to compromise the investigation. So when we make an arrest, when different agencies make an arrest, we'll have that information for you. But understand that because the justice for these victims is so important, we can't compromise the investigation of their crime by talking about it before that arrest is made. I do. total number of kits that they have seen that have been returned? Well, if we get those numbers for you, we will, because so a kit gets sent out to the national lab. What the national lab does is determine if it can extract DNA. If it can, regardless, it then comes back to the KSP crime lab. If DNA was able to be extracted, the crime lab then runs it through CODIS. And regardless, they let the local law enforcement know, but that's the stage of the hit. And at that point, it would be returned to the local law enforcement who open their investigation. And so when you start hearing about the ultimate results, we'll be at that stage of arrest, post-DNA being pulled, post-hit, post-investigation at that time of arrest. But I am confident that the law enforcement is taking it seriously, and I'm confident that you're going to see results. When I get those results, some will happen in the beginning, because some people will already be in the system. Take the serial rapists that we believe are out there and will be located. But we will also see later hits and arrests as people come into the system. The perpetrators' DNA is currently in the system, but when they're picked up for another crime, that DNA is taken, it will then match up in the system. So what I think you will see are there will be a series of investigation, arrests, prosecutions in the beginning, but you will see more and more and more of these over time. We'll pull it. Yes.
How did it get this bad, more or less, nationwide?
Well, you're right. It is a national problem that only came really to national prominence several years ago. There are some good reasons, and there are some not so good reasons. And in the end, a lot of it was made by individual decisions at either the law enforcement level or another one. There was not a series of best practices out there and enforced that there needed to be. And I believe that in the last several years, we have brought, and I mean this as a country, more and necessary attention to this issue. There's no excuse for it happening. All of these should have been tested, regardless. And so while some reasons were good, some reasons were bad, what I'm focused on is in the future, we never, ever make that mistake again. And I believe Kentucky has enacted some of the best legislation. We are creating some of the best practices, and we have everybody engaged on both sides of the political aisle, in our law enforcement, in our advocate community. And so I feel like we are taking the steps that we need to make. We can't stop. We can't stop, and we can't just assume that there are 3,000. There have been different reports that there are more. And regardless of whether this grant runs out, we'll have to find the means, and I'm certainly willing to contribute to those means to make sure that every single one of these is tested. And I'm sure that we will learn that there are new hurdles that we have to face along the way. We're just learning that storage may be an issue. So the new SAFE Act requires storage of these kits for a significant period of time. It's a good requirement. What we're finding is there may not be currently abilities, whether locally or even statewide. That's something we can and we should address.
This might be a question for Gretchen or
Yes.
Christy, but obviously a lot of people never thought these would be tested in the first place, and now that we're making so much progress testing these, have you learned anything? Is there anything we want to go back to the General Assembly coming up and ask them we need to tweak this or do something else?
With the SAFE Act. Well, first of all, I want to explain some of the work that went into developing the protocol for notifying victims. As we looked at other jurisdictions, we have the benefit of looking at what they've done, although very few other states have addressed this as on a statewide level. So I want to just really stress what General said and what Commissioner Moberly said, that we are charting a new path here, and we're doing so in a very collaborative way. We decided in Kentucky to notify every victim of the results of the testing. Remember that there may, regardless of what the result of that testing is, because we believed that a victim-centered approach is putting control back with that victim, giving information to that survivor, and we got survivor impact. One of the things I'm most proud of this office for doing is that we have involved survivors at every stage of the way and gotten their input. And Michelle Kuiper, who could not be here because of a family emergency, stressed that it was very important that even when she was notified at various stages in her case, when her case matched to another victim but did not yet match to an offender, she was still glad she had that information. So victim notification, being very victim-centered, and we've done that every step of the way. We're modeling it hopefully by showing how victim services are working with law enforcement. As for the General Assembly, I think that people will continue to look at victims' rights in this process and whether any changes need to happen in the future.
I want to get back to the announcement. These are online toolkits. Are they available now to all the police?
Yes, they have. Go ahead, John, if you
Yes.
want.
What we're going to be doing is late this week and early next week, those are going to be disseminated to every law enforcement agency directly in the state. So those will be sent out. There'll be different access points. They can get them offline. They can contact us by phone. And we've been working with law enforcement now for several months. We've been polling them, finding out what they need. What training do you need? Where do you feel the weakest? What's your strongest suit? What are you going to do? I mean, now that the kits are being required to be held for 50 years from the date that they were collected, do you have enough room to store them?
And because of the news release mentioned like $4 million and another $1 million, was that $5 million for these toolkits?
Oh, the news release is talking about the $4.5 million that was provided by this office to the Kentucky State Police Crime Lab to ensure we never had a backlog again in the future. That was to allow them to hire more people and get the equipment that they needed. The extra $1 million are funds from the General Assembly that we've been able to direct towards investigations, gathering the right data. So this piece will not cost or has not cost the Commonwealth anything other than the hard work and time that was put in by this office, by the Jefferson County Commonwealth Attorney's Office, and by many others around the state. But every law enforcement agency in Kentucky is going to get a direct touch that says this toolkit is available. Here it is. We'll get it to you however you need it, but use it. Be ready for it.
And the toolkits explain everything they should know about investigating a sexual assault.
We believe that they have all the best practices and all the best guidelines, but we always want to be open to learning as well. But we think that for today, for what we know in this world, that these are the best practices, and if people follow them, they'll get better results.
And the toolkit can grow. So as we learn, we want to add to it.
Mine is shrank. They disappear all around the house.
Okay, all right. Anybody else on this?
Anybody else on this one? All right.
Very good.
John?